All right. The next thing that we're going to do, again, we're going to have Kourtney coming on. She's going to be doing a couple of wonderful projects, very user-friendly, or I should say beginner-friendly, fat quarter-friendly, just a lot of fun projects that are going to get you really comfortable with sewing. Also, you don't have to be a beginner. You can just be wanting to knock out a couple projects, maybe have perfect gifts. And we're going to bring up Kourtney, and she's going to show you what she's doing today.
Well, hey.
Hello, friend. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good. Speaking of friends, are you going to make some introductions to Jolene and Ethel today?
I will. We'll probably do Jolene and Lucy.
Lucy too.
And then Ethel's way over here. So I do name everything.
She does. It's pretty fun. All right. Well. Oh, sorry, Kourtney. I didn't mean to cut you off. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm great. I did decide after watching all these people that are amazing that I think I'm comic relief for today. It's kind of funny.
We all could use that, right?
Yeah.
Man. Well, we just want to tell a little bit about Kourtney. We met her on TikTok, and so we've been corresponding and having a lot of fun together, but she is also going to be a Sewing Parts Online ambassador. So you're going to be seeing her around quite a bit too. But can you go ahead and tell them how they can follow you, Kourtney, just so they know where they can search you out?
Absolutely. Is there a feedback on your side?
I don't believe so. Brian, do we have a feedback? Good. I don't think so.
It's just me. Okay. So I'm on the TikTok. And I say the TikTok because I'm over 40 years old. And, at that age, we say the TikTok, the Facebook. So you can find me on the TikTok. It's at Kourtney Govro 141, or you can look for So Excited. I'm also on the YouTube, of course, the YouTube. And, and then I have a page on the Instagram. So you can find me all over the place. It's either under my name or So Excited. And I'm having a super amount of fun with it. So, yeah.
Well, we love seeing your stuff, but we got a lot to talk about today. So why don't we go ahead and let you get to your first project? I know you're going to be switching over to a second one. So when you need a little break, just let us know and we'll take care of that for you.
Yeah. So everybody, I just realized that I'm on my computer camera. That's fun. So anyway, everybody knows that I collect vintage quilts. I am an avid vintage quilt woman. I preserve them. I like to date fabric. I like to figure out how they all work together. But I also buy a lot of vintage quilt blocks, and I feel like I'm rescuing them. Sometimes they sit in boxes or they sit in an antique store and nobody can enjoy them. Everybody's just looking at them and they say, oh, that's nice. And they really don't know what that is. So I will go rescue these blocks. And unfortunately, what I do is I put them back in a box. And I feel like that is doing them a disservice because that's a history that we should see and enjoy. So like, for example, if you guys can all see this, there is feed sack, there is old clothes, and they all tell a story. So like that's old clothes, and that's probably some feed sack. And I write historical fiction, so I like to grab it. But I realized the other day that all of my stuff is in these boxes. And when the Sewing Parts Online folks asked me to do a demo, one of the things we talked about was me doing a cup cozy. So I work at a coffee shop. It's a nonprofit for a sex trafficking shelter. And so I work with coffee. So let's do a coffee cozy. So I made this first one. And this is made out of a cutter quilt. If you're not familiar with what a cutter quilt is a quilt that's beyond saving. Some of the old quilts I'll try to save. Some of these are cutters. So when I was playing with my blocks the other day, I was like, wow, I could do a coffee cup cozy out of these fun blocks. So that's what we're going to do. I've got my camera all set up right here next to me, and I'm going to flip over here so that you guys can see it. So Brian, if you want to flip to camera 2, camera 1, camera 2. Ooh, that is a little bit sideways. Sorry, guys, I'm going to flip it around. Now it's upside down. I'm sorry, Brian. So we're going to go with upside down. Okay. So this is the block. Now, some of you are cringing because it is a beautiful block, but it will get to be used and enjoyed. So all you do, they have a product on their website called the Gypsy Quilter Drink Cozy Pre-Cut Batting. So you don't have to have all the skill to figure out how to cut everything out or make everything work appropriately. This is all done for you. So you take your cup cozy batting and you lay it on top. Now, similarly, if you wanted to use a fat quarter, you could just open up your fat quarter and you could do the same thing. And you could cut it out and make a fat quarter. You actually make several out of your fat quarter. So the first thing you do is just lay it out, make sure it doesn't peek over the edges. So you want to pull it down to where it doesn't. And then you're going to take something like a chalk pencil. There are a lot of different pencil options out there, but you could just kind of go like that. Doesn't that make a fun sound? It's fun for me. Maybe not for you. And you come all the way around and just trace it. And then after you trace it, you cut it out. Now, what I will tell you, I'm going to bring one that I've already cut out over here. When you're doing it, make sure you're getting the design laid out the way you want. So I wanted to get a little bit of the solid and a little bit of the non-solids. And then I wanted to make sure that I could get it going. So let's pop over. I'm going to pin this down. You guys are like, wow, compared to the last lady, this looks like a vacation. So we're going to mark on it again. All the sounds are so great. I will tell you, I stopped by Starbucks this morning because I was like in a hurry to get back here because I was nervous. And I noticed how grouchy everybody's at Starbucks. And I'm like, that is not the way to be around coffee. See what I said? Comic relief. So now that I've marked it, I'm going to pull it back just a little back so you can see it. There is just a nice little light line, and it's just chalk. You can also use like a friction pen that's erasable. And then you're just going to use your hand scissors and you're going to trim it. Don't cut your finger off. I was going to use my rotary cutter, and my husband was like, it would not be good to cut your real finger off on live TV. So I agreed. Now I folded my fat quarter in half so that I can cut 2 at once. And then I'm just going to keep cutting. I might have just cut these out backwards because I was so excited. And then you just trim it. So the nice thing about using a solid is it doesn't matter whether you cut it out backwards. So you just trim it. I will tell you something interesting as I'm cutting this out, because I know this is probably easy peasy lemon squeezy for y'all. I work at a trafficking shelter, and did you know that art therapy, sewing therapy is actually used very readily in our community because trauma is stored in the creative side of your brain. And so it allows you to release that trauma as you create something. So something to remember when you're sewing is don't take it too seriously. Just have fun with it. Allow yourself just to create something beautiful that you will love and use. And even if it's not perfect, it's totally okay. And it's just a joy to sew. That's one of the things I love about sewing. So what I've done while I was talking is here is my batting. Here is my topping. And then this is my backing. So if this was a fabric with pattern on it, you would lay them pretty side to pretty side. However, it's a solid, so you don't need to have it pretty side to pretty side. So I'm going to put that all together, and then we're going to stitch. So I'm going to move my camera over here to Jolene. Just one second so you guys can see Jolene. Look, there, it turned to the right direction. Well, for heaven's sakes. Okay, so this is Jolene. You guys, if you're on my TikTok, you have heard me talk about her. She's my new bestie. Jolene is a Juki TL 2010 too. I love her. She is a straight stitch machine, which means she doesn't do very much. Like from a sewing perspective, she's not like some of those computerized machines that have all those stitches and all those things, but she does a phenomenal straight stitch. Now, I don't want to jinx her, she's nervous too, but she does a phenomenal straight stitch. And I want to show you when I get ready to do this, I put my 1/4 inch seam foot. We're actually going to change feet. Anyway, we're going to change it when we go along because I want to make sure that I'm using the right foot. So we're going to talk a little bit later about walking feet and the differences. And we're going to talk just a little bit about how easy it is to change the foot. Because when I started sewing, I was like, I don't know how to make this work. And I would have never changed it. So Jolene is loaded up with some RFL thread. You've seen this a couple times today. I got a really cool kit of thread, which had pinks in it. And I have kind of the mid-range one loaded in Jolene right now. I've been loving sewing with this hot pink. Super fun. I did not change my bobbin because I use these preloaded bobbins. And this is one of my favorite things on the planet. You've probably seen me talk about it if you're on my TikTok. But the back side of it is a magnetic because she has a metal side loading bobbin. So right here is a little magnetic. So it slides in super easy. It comes in a little bucket. It's from Philtic. You do have to find the right one. I said that wrong the first time I ever showed it. But this is called Magna Quilt. And this is amazing. You don't have to wind your own bobbin. And I will say I have the RFL gray, not Greg. And I keep my gray pre-wound bobbin on top. And these little savers on Sewing Parts Online are so handy. I really, even though I've got a bucket of grays, I like to keep them together. And it matched really well for the project I did with it the other day. So let's sew this together. I hope there's some beginners watching today that this is helpful to. So all you do, we're going to load her in. And notice it's not perfect. This might be a little problematic here in a minute, but it's okay. It's not perfect on purpose because what we don't want is to think too much about a little relaxing project. And I hope that you guys will remember that. So I am sewing just a simple stitch. When I get to the corner, lift them up, flip it, lay it back down, go again. Now we're going to leave sometimes we pin these, but I don't always pin a pull through hole. And so I'm just going to pin to remind myself because sometimes I just sew right through it. So we're just going to sew. Now when you get to this point, don't forget to pull your pin out. Jolene allows a back stitch because we're going to pull it through. And one of my favorite Jolene features is the auto thread snips. If you don't have that on your machine, you should be sad. You should get a machine that can do that. Get a Jolene. Jolene is a fantastic sewing machine. And I just want to say, I bought Jolene. She's my baby, and I will brag about her all the time. So I want to point something out. If you don't have a 1/4 inch seam foot, it's so helpful. It keeps that stitch in line, and you don't have to worry about it. It's one less thing to think about while you're sewing. So I'm going to sew it, get to the edge again, lift it, flip it, drop it, lift it, flip it, drop it. That could be a song. Like I said, comic relief compared to the other people. So I have a lot of fun on my TikTok with sewing. I learned to sew in 2020 with my mom. She taught me how to sew, and she still makes fun of my sewing. I can say that because I know she's not watching because she's on an airplane. But you just sew right along. Now, I want you guys to know, I did not have Jolene turned all the way up, because basically she can do 1,500 stitches per second. And when she does 1,500 stitches per second, she just powers along like a motor house. Okay, when you get to this point, you're going to trim off these corners. This is kind of important, because when you flip things through, you end up with too much bulks in your corner. Now you can even go, because I got my stuff a little fat here, and trim it down a little bit. Some of you guys that are purists are like, oh my gosh, who is this woman? Not trimming right. No, my ladies at church, I ran up to church this morning to sewing group to show them all how to work Sewing Parts Online event for reels. I hope they're watching. Leslie, I hope you're on. We learned something new. So we now have an opening. We're going to pull it through. Now, I didn't put the elastic in this. If you look at this one, this is actually a hair tie. I want you guys to know you don't have to like buy expensive hair elastic. You can put it with a button. I'm actually just going to sew this closed as opposed to putting in a button. So you pull it through like this. Now, if it's too far, don't force it. Grab yourself a pokey thing. You can get like a real pokey thing, or I'm using the Fonz and Porter thing you use to make half square triangles. And you don't want to poke through. I did that one time. And get down in there and get that corner poked out. So look how beautiful that is. And I'm going to get to enjoy that, and it won't be stuck in a drawer anymore. So I'm really excited about that. I'll go ahead and keep poking through. A couple of other things I wanted to tell you about while I'm sewing, pushing this through, is I'm using a Quilter Select board, cutter board, cutter mat. I love this. I have both Creative Grids and Quilter Select. I got them both from Sewing Parts Online, and I really love them both. Here's a cool fact, fun fact. I use my Quilter Select ruler. If you haven't used a Quilter Select ruler before, the back is almost like rubbery and it grips, so you don't have to worry about it sliding it around. I also like how it all lines up really well on the mat. That's one of the things I use. I kind of like to use when I'm doing it. So I'm going to flip this in. So here's the other thing. Oops, I didn't poke out that corner. So there we go. Get that little corner out. Well, hey.
Hey. Hello. I just wanted to let you know that your friend Leslie is on.
Hi, Leslie. I taught Leslie and Donna how to find you guys this morning.
Oh, well, thank you for that.
That was super fun. They are making tea towel aprons for me. So at the coffee shop, we have these gosh awful green and maroon. I swear a guy bought them. No offense, Brian. But I swear some guy bought these and he was like, well, this must be very functional. I'm like, well, they're very ugly. So I got these really cute tea towel aprons, and the ladies in my sewing group at church are helping put them together for the kids. They're not really kids. They're young adults. They like to be called young adults. They are young adults. Okay, so I'm going to flip this around really quick so you guys can see me use Lucy. I'm just going to move my camera because I totally messed up when I set this up, guys. I'm very sorry. So this is Lucy. Okay. So Lucy is an aliso. I don't even know how to say that, but aliso.
It is Oliso.
Oliso.
So I remember now because I'm like, you have to say Oli. Liso.
Oli. It's not Olay.
Yeah, because I used to say Oli, or how did I say it before? Now I always Oliso. Yeah, that's what I used to say, and I was told it's Oliso. So now we know.
Well, you know, I finished Advanced Biblical Hebrew last term, and my professor was like, you have kind of a Southern accent with your Hebrew words, which is hard to do. And I said, well, not hard for me. So anyway, I was like, okay. So
I'm sure you have lots of stories.
Yeah, it was fun. So basically, you need to press him just so that you have everything down, especially over this little segment here. Now, had I been smarter, I'd have bought those really cool pens that Sewing Parts Online has that would, you can iron over the tip. Oh, I see my secret word. So that it could be easier to see. So now we're going to flip over to Jolene. I'm going to just flip the camera around. I apologize again because I didn't turn my camera on right. Sewing Parts Online's like, that girl crazy. Anyway.
No, you're okay.
So another cool thing about Jolene is when I have used other sewing machines, getting the bobbin thread up has been the bane of my existence. All you have to do is hit this little button and see how it just popped up. Some of you that have been sewing a long time are like, wow, she didn't know that. It's all good, people. So we are going to top stitch right along the edge. Now you can do a quarter or an eighth, however you want to do it. I'm going to do probably closer to an eighth. So when I say that, a quarter inch would be right here. And then an eighth of an inch would be half of a quarter. You know, when I started sewing, I was like, gosh, that's backwards because an eight seems higher than 4. You can see how I failed 8th grade math, but it's all good because now we're sewing. So I'm going to do this. Oh, I'm going to change one thing. Jolene, let me make sure she's ready to go. Okay, I'm going to change my stitch length just because I think it looks a little decorative. Maybe it doesn't, but for me, it does. So I'm going to just make sure Jolene feeds through. Now, something to watch on this, I'm not using my walking foot. We're going to put the walking foot here in a bit. This really is not thick enough to justify a walking foot at this point. So I'm going to sew it through. And you do kind of have to eyeball it a little bit because I want to keep it, because here's my quarter, here's my eighth, and I'm going to go straight through. The other thing to watch is because this was a separate block, I want to make sure I get it all in there. And a friend of mine on TikTok once said, she goes, Kourtney, it's okay to go slow. It is okay to go slow, except if you're on a time clock. When you get to the corner, now you could just stop and just have the bottom, but it won't look as cute. So flip it. That's a cool technique if you're a new sewist, to just lift your foot. I did see the video from Sewing Parts Online the other day on the YouTube about keeping your foot level. And I was like, oh, I hope my foot stays level so nobody judges me. So that is an interesting fact, by the way. If you ever watch YouTube shorts or any of the YouTubes, the Sewing Part Online videos are full of helpful information. You guys do an awesome job with that. So make sure you're subscribed on YouTube to Sewing Parts Online. They're also on the TikTok, but the YouTube shorts are fantastical.
Thank you. We also appreciate all your information too. You also share wonderful tips.
I just messed up, but don't tell anybody.
You're a rock star. It's okay.
I don't think I'll be able to see it. Okay, so we got it all the way around. I do have these really cool scissors. Usually I just use snips, but aren't those fun? Those are on the Sewing Parts Online website. So check that out. So this is the cup cozy. Now, if I had put the elastic in, we could just do that. But what I'm going to do is just sew it together. And I probably won't do it today because the next project is a little bit more intense. But I wanted you to see how cute that is. So don't be afraid to use these blocks. So that's this one. Brian, if you want to switch over to the other camera for a minute. Okay, so when you buy this, make sure you buy the batting. I'm obsessed with, actually, my 14-year-old was like, don't say obsessed anymore, Mom. That's not cool. Well, I'm obsessed with the Gypsy Quilter battings. They have the bowl cozies. Everything's like this. Super easy. I got inspired to do the cup cozy this way because I ordered this pattern off Sewing Parts Online. And see how cool it is? It's a scrap buster. But then I was looking at it and I was like, I have these cool blocks. So you could use, you know, like the other day, I found a block that I needed for a quilt and I finished the quilt without. So I had this extra block. So I could have made something like this. You could make a hot pad. You could make all sorts of fun things with it. I don't want you to ever be worried about wasting it. You know, I have them all stuck up on my wall right here just so I can enjoy them for a little bit. But that is a great use of it. And when I cut out that backing, just know that you cut out 2 at a time and you could do a couple of these at a time. So before we start the next one, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a walking foot. So I had never used a walking foot until December of this past year. I had no idea what it was. And somebody was like, use your walking foot. And I was like, what in the world's a walking foot? Because I did some quilts. I did 86 quilts in 1 year. It's great therapy, but cheaper than a therapist. Actually, I think the therapist might have been cheaper. So anyway, this was my first walking foot. It came with one of my machines. I want you to look at the bottom. There's nothing wrong. Use what you can afford, use what you can buy, but just notice something on this. See how that has plastic on the top? And can you see this has plastic? The interior workings it's not very heavy. So when I got Jolene, I was like, opened this up and I was like, dog, that's some nice looking feed dogs. So my walking foot is so much better. Look at the internal mechanical workings here. It's all metal and it's super duper heavy. I don't know what's wrong with my words today, but it's super duper heavy. So this is a must buy. String. So I'm going to show you how to take this off and drop us on Jolene. And I can just turn the camera a little bit this way since I turned on the wrong camera, but you're going to want to flip over to my front camera. So we are going to flip that off. Now, the joke is that I have a pocket full of all sorts of things to work on my sewing machine. I've got feet and everything. I just bought a little organizing case because if you saw any of my TikToks, you were like, she needed to clean her space. So I'm going to unscrew this. Normally, I would use a little key, but I didn't need to. So this is my 1/4-inch seam foot. Isn't that fantastic? I think this is fantastic. Who invented this stuff? But I heard about it. You totally need one of these. They will change your life. Totally change your life. So I'm going to throw it over here in my little basket. And then I'm going to put this one on. The key to putting this on is this piece. Don't forget to do this piece. So some of you that sew all the time are like, wow, that's really elementary. Oh, you also have to take the screw all the way out. So pull it over here, put it up here, and you lock it into place. Watch your needle. Don't break your needle, especially when you're on live TV. Then you're going to put it back in. So as you put it back in, just know that that little arm is super important. That's the top of my head. So move that over. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. Doesn't want to go in the hole. There it goes. So just screw it in really quick. Make it a little tighter. And what this does is kind of cool. It moves the fabric, the top and the bottom, together at the same time. So if you make a sandwich with anything, you're going to want to push it through. And first step, ooh, my iron's still on. And first step of this project, you're going to need it. So we are going to make this super cute. It's called a Petit basket. This is not only fat quarter friendly, but it is a layer cake friendly. So have you ever gotten done with a quilt, a layer cake quilt, and you had a couple layer cakes left over, 2 10-inch blocks? You could make this happen with that. You could make this more easily happen with a fat quarter. So if you start with your 2 blocks, just like this. Now I am using, oh, look at that country rose. Wonder what that keyword is. So you have 2 pieces of fabric, and I just cut these out before. I actually am using a canvas this time. I used quilter's fabric last time, and this is the quilter's fabric, and it worked really, really well. I'm almost sad that I didn't do it again with this, but this worked really well. The cool thing about it is it holds all your little stuff. So, all right. So here's why you need your walking foot on. So when you go to sew this, you have to take a piece of fusible interfacing, soft and stable. This is kind of a foamy fusible interfacing. And I went and got some that had the fusible on one side. So instead of having to put on basting stuff or anything like that, I just got some that had it already on the one side, and I could just iron it on. And some of you are wondering, why is this bigger? I was wondering that. When you sew it using the walking foot and do some top stitching on it, quilting on it, you're going to want that little bit of extra, but we're going to trim it off because that's important. So start here and just super simple. I'm just going to do an X, and I'm going to bring my stitch down just a little bit, and I'm going to take off. Now see how that's going through? I will tell you, I broke a lot of needles and stuff before I learned what a walking foot was. So, and now it's one of my favorite things. The only bad thing about a walking foot is if you leave it on and you're trying to sew other things, it doesn't grippy it in the same way. And so you might lose your place real easy. So I'm going to do another X. zoom, turn Jolene up. Jolene's probably angry that I'm doing that. She's a pretty good workhorse. My friend Valerie posted a video that you can like sew through a ruler. So check that out. Just fantastic. The thread, is that not gorgeous? Okay, so don't get too excited, Kourtney. Let me move that, and we're going to move over, and we're going to do some marking because we need to do a little bit of marking. I need to find the one I already marked. So on this pattern, moving over again. Sorry, Brian. Okay, so on this pattern, you're going to need to mark some lines on it because, and then we're going to sew them so it helps it fold. So if you look at this basket, see how it has some lines sewed in? It actually helped it fold, which is pretty cool. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to just trim off this sides. So just, it uses any kind of rotary cutter. This is my preference. I love this one. I also like the Grace Company's True Cut. Oh, it is so nice. It's very ergonomic, but I really like to use it on my big fabric with the ruler with the channel in it. This one is just super easy. I bought a new blade just to make sure that it was safe. One more. Oops, I missed it. So here's this beautiful piece. Now, the instructions are kind of cool. When I first got this, I'll be honest, I was like, oh, is this beginner enough? Or is this going to be intimidating? Because I don't want to be intimidating. So I was trying to make sure I got something that you all would enjoy. But this isn't so bad. The instructions on this is a by Annie pattern, which I hadn't done before. They are very easy to follow. So we're going to draw some marking lines. We're going to use the fun little, I think this is called Tailor's chalk. So I felt like really fancy. But we're going to use the Tailor's chalk to do it. So the first thing we'll do is line it up, and we're going to go in 2.5. So you can do this a couple of ways. You could use your ruler, or you could use your mat. I love to use my mat. So I line it up in the corner. See how it lines into the squares? So I go 1, 2, and then I'm going to come here, and there's my half, and there's my half down at the bottom. So something for you beginners to see is if you look up at the top here, I'm using this top line here to keep my ruler all square and lined up. I'm also looking through my ruler to see that it's lined up with all these little lines, because that way I know that it's going to be a good line. So roll it on there. Then instead of trying to do it backwards, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do it again. So 1, 2.5. And oops, that would have been a bad day. This is the one thing about quilting and sewing. You can be a little bit free-spirited, but sometimes you do have to put the lines in the right spot. So you're basically making a grid. I'm going to flip it again, and then I'm going to come back and refer to my pattern, and I'm going to do 2.5 again. 1, 2.5, just like this. And oops, I had my ruler wrong, guys. That is definitely at an angle. There we go. And actually move it up a little bit. Okay, I'm going to flip it over and flip it over again. And then I do 2.5. So on my TikTok, just so you guys know, I focus on beginner sewers because I felt like when I started sewing, there was a lot of people that, because I was like 40 or whatever, and they didn't think, they thought I should know how to sew or something. And there was a lot of, judgment. I'm like, this is so much fun. Thank the Lord I figured it out later in life, because now I know I can go do something super relaxing. And there are so many fun tools. I'm going to show you this one. Oh, I grabbed my scissors. This is called a Zircle. So it's a pin, magnetic pin holder. I throw my pins down next to my sewing machine. It's a bad habit. But with this, I can just go like this. And look how they lay. So I think this is so cool. I have other magnetic pin holders. They're not this cool. I got them at a garage sale, granted. But this one, you just slide it over. Let me pull a few out like again. Isn't that fun? You totally need one of these. You're like, man, her sewing isn't great, but she does love her fun little gadgets. It's a true fact. So we're going to go over here to the sewing machine to Joey. And do y'all name your sewing machines? I mean, or is that just a me? I guess you guys can't answer because you're on the TV. But I got some funny names the other day from people. I named my lamp too. If you ever watch my TikToks, Carl is my lamp. So let's sew these quick lines, and then I'll show you the next step, which is actually super cool. So I'm going to just sew those really quick. When you're doing this, don't pull or push. That was something I learned the hard way. Don't pull or push, because you want the feed dogs to do the work for you. You're just using your hands to hold it straight. I was teaching a high school class last year, and it was called a maker's class, and we made things that we sold. It was a really interesting class, and we taught the kids how to sew and paint and do some different things. And that was the most interesting thing. They wanted to push that material through or pull it through. I will say their favorite project, Jolene, you're a little loud. Their favorite project was making the popsicle holders for the kids at Children's Mercy, which was a super cool project. So just a quick, so you can see it. Look how cool that is. See the lines? So I've marked my lines. Now we're going to mark it again, and we're going to sew a little box so that it has a seam around the trim. So it makes it kind of cool. So instead of marking this time, that's going to make me crazy. I got to trim that. Instead of marking this time, we're just going to come out 1/4 inch, which is a little bit harder to do when you have your walking foot on, but we're going to eyeball it. When in doubt, eyeball it. Or I'm just going to mark it really quick so you guys can see it. This is one of my other favorite rulers. It's a Creative Grid. Where did my cool little chalk pen there? And don't let quarters and halves and everything intimidate you. So you can do it pretty easy. So when I need to mark 1/4 inch, here's a half, here's 1/4, and you just mark it and practice it. Think about it when you're doing other things, which sounds goofy, but I sound like a math teacher. But Mrs. Chatlos would be so proud. So just mark them up really quick, and I'll probably eyeball the other side just to make sure we have the right amount of time. So there's that. Then you take your, oh, we have to sew it first. Let me sew it first. Doom. Go that way. Okay, so just for eyeballing purposes, you could just use your little foot here on the inside. It's not going to hurt it if it's off just a little bit. Come up to that little corner, lift it, flip it. A lot of lifting and flipping in this. Sounds like an exercise program or something. I don't exercise. If you've ever seen my videos, I don't sweat. I glisten. And if I was being chased by a deer, I would just let him get me. So there's that side. We're not going to mark the other side. I'm just going to show you how to do it without. Flip it around. See, it's not so bad to do it without. You can eyeball it. Flip it. Drop it. That could be a dance. Flip it. Drop it. One more time. And then we're done. So you see how easy that was? So I'm just going to come over here and talk to you while I cut this out. So now I want to cut. So if you look at the instructions tell us to cut out right on the other side of that. So we're going to just give it a snip. Don't get your scissors hooked on the magnetic thing. You could also use your rotary cutter, but when I did it with the rotary cutter, I will say I went through my stitches. You could just use your hand scissors. It's always good to have a really good pair of hand scissors. Hey, Trisha.
Hello, hello. I wanted to ask you about your scissors. We had somebody comment. What brand are those?
These are Fiskars. I got them from Sewing Parts Online.
Cool.
They're party
We have
scissors.
so many options. I'm not aware of those. Those are super cute.
Yeah. They are super fun. I actually liked that the plate is gold. I don't know why.
Very cute. The other thing you had mentioned the True Cut. So just a fun note, the True Cut combos are on sale for 20% off. So you're going to have to get stocked up.
If you guys don't have one of those, they are life-changing. I get more questions about those than anything else I sew with. And they save your hands. Like if I would have had those when I was teaching my high school class, it would have felt a lot safer.
Your high school class, I love that.
I did.
We actually do have a whole segment on True Cut. I think it's day 3, isn't it, Brian? I'm pretty sure.
Awesome.
So that'll be fun to watch too. But anyway, I'll let you back to it.
Thank you. So we're going to take this next piece. So here's my piece. Looks like the letter H. Feel like I'm on Sesame Street. So fold it in half. You're actually going to fold it pretty side to pretty side. I folded it backwards in half. And you want these little squares to line up as best as possible. And you're going to grab that. I'm backwards on my camera. And grab that. Just like that. And then we're going to trim. I clipped that wrong. We're going, not trim. We're going to sew right up the edge really quick. So I'm going to show you. I'm just going to line it up. And I'm going to put it right here. Now I'm going to tell you, I'm going to backstitch. And yes, I'm backstitching all the way down. Just because this, when I was doing it yesterday on my practice run, that's what I figured was going to happen. I made Jolene mad, which is not uncommon. Sometimes she and I have arguments. And I'm like, Jolene? And I will tell you, it's like having children. You just have to walk away every once in a while. So I'm going to load her up again. And Jolene does have that little auto threader. I have no idea that I'm like completely opposed to it. Jolene, this is not the time to throw your thread. I gotta lick my thread. Don't be offended. I'm sorry. But she and I do have words every once in a while. And I will tell you, I have my new Baby Lock Zeal over there on a table in the event that Jolene got fussy. Because I was like, girl, if you cannot behave, I will sew this whole segment on that new machine. And you can be Jolene in the corner. I named her Jolene because I had a Juki DX7, which I do like. It's a computerized machine. I'm kind of a machine junkie. I don't know. They're just fun. It's kind of like men in cars. You know, they buy different cars or like different cars. I have like 7 sewing machines. And I just like to sew on them and see how they sew different. Is anybody else like that, or am I totally crazy? So zip that on really quick. And then you open it up and fold it in like this. And you're going to sew it again. We're not even going to iron for time purposes. But we're just going to zip it on. Ooh, she got a little angry there. It's okay, Jolene. Don't get mad again. And do the same thing on the other side. And then I'll show you. I've got the other piece already put together. Just to save us some time. So if I would have ironed that little seam open. Y'all were thinking I was going to sew my finger, weren't you? Well, I missed it altogether because I had my finger in the way. So basically what you end up with is this. And you're going to have a lining. And the lining looks like this. It's the exact same thing. It's just an inch bigger. It's a little bit different. And this is what your interior looks like. You're going to put them pretty side to pretty side. You're going to push these all in together. You're going to push the corners in just like this. And then what you do is kind of interesting. It makes, they called it a faux binding. It's like when, have you ever bought like faux leather pants and they call them vegan leather? It's kind of like that, except binding. And if y'all know, I don't do my own binding. My mama does my binding. So everybody's like, you got to learn. I'm like, no, I got a mama. So I'm going to put this in. I'm going to show you how to do this. Line your raw edges up. So that's one of the big things. If you want that faux binding, you're going to have to line your raw edges up and go all the way around. And we're going to leave just a little pull-through hole. And when you leave a little pull-through hole, you will then have a good opportunity to pull it through. And then you can pull it through. So I'm just going to top stitch this a little bit because I know we're kind of close. I think we're kind of close on time, aren't we, Trisha? I think so. So
You're still doing just fine, Kourtney. It looks like we've got about 15 minutes or so.
Oh, girl, I could sew a whole nother project in 15 minutes. I do easy stuff. Well, good. I'll slow down. We'll have a good conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and sew this on since I have all this time. And Jolene, she got mad at me. She got fussy. This happens. I'm going to pull her in. Do rethread it. Oh my gosh, Trisha. I had my foot down. Trisha taught me a trick. I thought Jolene was broken the other day. And I literally emailed Trisha on a weekend. And I was like, girl, my machine's broken.
This is what we do for friends, right?
Tell them the story about raising your leg.
Yeah. So it's actually pretty funny. When I first started working here at Sewing Parts Online, I was sitting in front of a machine and I was threading it and everything. And the boss came over and he's like, so you're threading your machine? I said, yeah. And he goes, stand up. I'm like, okay. And so I stood up. He's like, lift up your foot. And I'm like, lift up my foot. He's like, no, lift up your foot. Physically lift up your foot. And I'm like, okay. So I lift up my foot. He's like, now, every time you sit in front of the machine, you remember this. You need to lift up your foot. So it's just to help you remember that anytime you're going to thread your machine, that presser foot needs to be up, because what that does is opens the tension disc and allows your thread to lay in there correctly. So when Kourtney was having issues, I was like, okay, I didn't want to be rude, but I'm like, okay, let's talk through the process. Did you lift up your presser foot? Yeah. So she had it.
Yeah, it was not raised. But I do think of that now when it happens, because I'm like, oh, wow. Okay.
Yep. Every time you'd be like, lift your foot.
I should like raise my leg here while I'm sitting. So to sew this on, so I use these little clips. This is a definite clip opportunity. So sometimes you use pins. Sometimes you use clips. Most of the time, you can use either. But for the most part, there are definite times when you use one or the other. So if I was doing this, notice how my little thingy is laid in the middle. I would use a pin and I would pin it like this. I know some of you are like, wow, that's super basic, but some of us that just start don't know. So it's always important to use that little pin going in a certain direction. The other thing to remember on your pin is pin it with the head side on the top of your fabric. I know that's another little basic thing for some of you, but the first few projects I did, I was awful. I had pins all over the place and broke needles and did all sorts of things. And breaking needles can be very dangerous, which we learned in my class last year. So let's sew this on. You're going to notice that this is a little bigger on the inside than your basket. Most of that is because of your faux binding. And I didn't on this one, and I won't on this one, do a top stitch all the way around. You can totally do that. I just did a little close stitch. If my mom was in town, I'd have her do a little hand whip stitch. But for me, I was like, oh, okay. So let's do this. Now, this is a little difficult because I'm actually going to flip my computer a little bit. You can see all of my great lights and everything because I want you to see how I have to do this. First things first, I am going to move a clip. You want that to be matched up. The seams should match. And I did iron these seams open when I did this project. And you're going to have to make it go around the side. So it's a little bit awkward, maybe a lot awkward, but you can totally do it. Don't worry about it. You can totally do it. So straighten out your interior lining as much as you can, and you are going to shove it underneath your machine. Try to keep everything lined up as possible. Here we go. So don't get your clip stuck under your walking foot on live TV. So let's sew it through. Keep going. I hope you guys are all going to tune in this afternoon for Chris. He's one of my favorite TikTok and online personalities. My mother got this thing in the mail. I think it was from AccuQuilt or somebody. And she goes, oh my gosh, Kourtney, your friend is on an advertisement. And I was like, my friend who? And she goes, Chris, your friend from the online world. I was like, yes, he is. But we do make really good friends on the online world. You know, it's a great little community. If you're looking to learn, I highly recommend go on TikTok. Don't be afraid of TikTok. I used to be in IT. I could talk all day about that. But go on one of those social medias, follow Sewing Parts Online, make sure you're following them, and follow some of us others that you see because, you know, all of us have questions. And when I have questions, I literally message people that I know in the online world. Chelsea, who's going to be on later, she is probably the nicest person on the planet. Chris, of course, he is probably the coolest quilter I've ever seen. I'm so afraid I'm going to sew my finger, but I keep talking. So we'll get that. Make sure I don't forget to do a pull-through hole. Okay, I did it good. The one thing you also want to remember, which I learned the hard way, is you don't want a pull-through hole on your seam. You just don't want that. So when you get to the point where you're going to make your pull-through hole, do a little back stitch and then pull it out. So So then you're going to pull it out. You're going to flip it out, flip it through the hole. Don't overthink this. It's, you know, I had somebody tell me the other day, it was like, I used to do a segment called Sew to Sell, and I do all the math on, you know, what it costs, what you can sell it for, and how you would evaluate that. And I had somebody tell me, they were like, well, it's not as nice as what you could get at the store. I'm like, well, that's mass produced crap. So don't worry about it. You want something that's handmade, get something that's handmade. So here is my cute little basket. And I will say, support those makers. You know, people make baskets, little bit off, need to iron it still. But people make little baskets and things like this on Etsy, and they are great to support, or learn to make it yourself and give it as a gift to a teacher. Use it on your sewing table. I have my Aurifil in there. I also have my other favorite, which everyone makes fun of me, the K-Row thread. This is fantastic thread. I keep 2 threads on top of my machine. Let me put it up there so you can see it. I know that's not what that's for, but I always just keep 2 so that I have them handy and I can pull them in and out. But this thread is fantastic. And this thread is beautiful. So I have enjoyed sewing on the Aurifil thread as well. So go out, make you a little basket. The pattern is available on Sewing Parts Online, and you can get one and you can make a gift for a friend. So very good. Are there any questions?
Okay. All right. We're back. All right. Well, let's see if we have any questions for you, Kourtney. Let's see.
They were like, no.
I think you were answering them as you were going. You were doing a wonderful job. No, these are great gifts. You did a great job showing. I'm just looking through. I think we're good. Do you want to go ahead and stick around while we give away a Baby Lock Joy?
I do. I love that.
Let's do it.
It's a wonderful machine. And I know you had advertised on your TikTok. Hopefully they come on over and have been commenting so they have a chance to win it too.
I hope so.
All right. Let's go ahead and pick our winner.
Come on, Leslie.
Wouldn't that be hilarious? Awesome. That would be so great.
That would be hilarious.
Dee! Yay! All right. Well, thank you. That's awesome. And I'll go over claiming the prize here in just a moment. But I just wanted to say once again, thank you so much for joining us, Kourtney. We really appreciate it. Both of those projects were a lot of fun, and we're going to be seeing you around a lot more lately. So we're excited to have you as a Sewing Parts Online ambassador.
Maybe someday we'll see you in the Sewing Parts Online studio.
Yeah, maybe we can convince you to come into the studio and be like, hey, here she is.
In live and in person.
Yes. Chelsea's been here. Now we have to...